Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governors can come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas, too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people have lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts, and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got, a lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. I'm not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself blood pressure or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing to and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old, and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for.
I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough. They adapt. But only can do so much when your politicians are ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not going to let Detroit be erased, bulldozed, or whatever. We're going to fight to the bitter end. Detroit going to survive.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished. When they incarcerate their children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
And my name is Clinton Yates. What's up, everybody? I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. It's tax day, April 15th, 2015. Filling in for Bill here on a bit of it's baseball season, so I'll call it a legitimate pinch hit scenario.
Nice.
Yeah, so I want to welcome everybody to the program. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening on your progressive station somewhere across America. You can listen to us on the iHeartRadio app if you have that on your phone. Of course, we're also on the TuneIn app using the Progressive Voices channel. You can obviously like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. You can check out the podcast. You can check us out on Twitter at BP Show, or you can watch us at youtube.com/TawkrTV, or on Free Speech TV. You can see us as well. That voice you heard was that of Peter Ogren, who is not to my right as he usually is, but is across the glass on the board. What's up, Peter?
Hey, Clinton. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
I'm a little out of my element in here.
Yeah, we're kind of scrambling.
You know,
this is a bit of a sort of a half-court press defense we got going on here. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377 is the number you can call to get in touch with us, and Alicia Cruz will be talking to you there. And of course, as I mentioned before, if you're looking at me, you can see my shirt. It's sort of an eggplant check. That's because Cyprian Bolding is there. I actually saw Sip at the ballpark the other day.
Oh, yeah?
And an aside, pull back the curtain a little bit.
He's lurking there in the ballpark.
Yeah, we took a selfie in front of the coffee machine on opening day at the yard. But,
nice.
We got a whole lot of things in the show. I want to mention, though, today is that it's tax day.
Sure
and
is.
so I wanted to ask you this, Peter. What is your tax setup? I am a let's go ahead and bang this out in 2 hours guy, because I'm married. I mean, unmarried with no kids.
Yeah.
And I don't own a whole lot of things.
Right.
So it's really just a matter of filling out the forms on the day, which I'm going to do as soon as I leave here.
Yeah.
Are you a full-blown, I got to get somebody to handle my stuff guy? You don't even bother with the receipts?
Nope. I mean, I have a lot of help.
Yeah.
Number one, it just ain't my thing. It's just I am not good at that stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm married with children and all that crap. So like, it gets complicated. It's easy to screw that up.
Yeah,
it's really easy to screw that up.
I had a buddy who went through, and I'm not going to detail the scenario, but he went through a situation where his accountant made a mistake to the tune of $10,000, which really screwed him with the IRS. But he said he called up the IRS, and they were surprisingly helpful, and they actually changed it within a second. He just had to get somebody, and he was like shocked.
I'll say this, because I not exactly a similar situation, but I had an issue not too far from that. Mm-hmm. And the IRS of today is not the IRS of yesterday.
Not your father's IRS?
They're not your father's IRS. And you know what? They proudly admit that. I even said something to him. Mm-hmm. I said, I don't deal with you guys a lot. Now that I am dealing with you, this is a lot less painful than it had been made out to be my entire life.
Right.
And they said, well, look, we realize that we have a certain
they had a PR
a certain
issue.
stigma.
Right.
And it was, I won't say it was pleasant, but it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Well, that's good.
It's great.
So if you're out and about, at your retail establishments today, there's all sorts of goofy promos going on to keep people in a better mood. We got a lot to get to on the show today, but first,
this
Peter.
is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. We go to Bournemouth, England, where there was a 10K running race.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that date line?
Bournemouth. Like Jason Bourne. Mouth.
Okay. Bournemouth.
You're right. You're better.
Okay.
Bournemouth. I married a British woman. I still can't get this right. Bournemouth, England. When over the weekend a 10K race was taking place, the Bournemouth Bay Run. It was, like I said, a leisurely 10K race, but the race marshal was missing from a key turn, and so 2 extra miles were added onto the race. The runners weren't told where to turn, and so they just kept going. Some of the runners broke down in tears because they didn't know when this race was going to end. They thought that they had somehow misjudged or miscalculated.
I'm sorry, I should not be laughing at that, but that is hilarious. By the time you run 10K, that extra 2 miles is just a complete psychological dagger.
Right? I mean, that messes with you so bad. Only 300 of the 1,200 runners involved actually finished.
Whoa.
Because everybody else just kind of was like,
what's going on?
What's going on? We're done. And they just kind of stopped. So, the Bournemouth Bay Run is not one that I have any intention of running anytime soon. The Bournemouth Supremacy, yeah. Just outside Austin, Texas, a man by the name of Rick Braun. He loves Taco Bell, Clinton. He loves Taco Bell so much that he says he goes there 2 to 3 nights a week. But he goes on his horse.
Yes.
Which you cannot do.
What?
The cops have told him repeatedly, you cannot do this. And so last week, he was fined $266 because he rode his horse to Taco Bell. The cops had told him apparently like 5 or 6 times, you can't ride your horse.
Well, I don't understand.
Through
Why
the Taco
not?
Bell drive-thru. Well, they say it's a danger to cars. It's a danger to the horse. You can't do that.
Okay. Wait, so is he taking his horse to Taco Bell, or is he going through the drive-thru? Okay.
He's going through the drive-thru.
See, those are separate matters, all right? If you lock your horse up, you know what I mean, and then walk in, that's a different thing than going through the horse through, if you will.
He's in line at the drive-thru.
Is this like a half-baked situation where he's feeding the horse the Taco Bell?
Let me tell you something. If he's going to Taco Bell 2 to 3 nights a week,
he's got bigger issues than whether or not he's on a horse.
You know what I mean? I've gone to Taco Bell 2 or 3 times in the last decade.
I was going to say, I couldn't even name a Taco. We talked about this before. I can't name a Taco Bell around here anymore.
Yeah, no.
I don't really know.
I don't go to Taco Bell just as a general rule of thumb.
No, absolutely not.
2 to 3 nights a week.
That's a lot of T-Bell.
A week. And yesterday, the Transportation Department heard a very interesting argument from a consumer group arguing that because planes are making their seats smaller, that is actually bad for your health. They say that flying already, you have an elevated risk of blood clotting, but when you put the seats closer together, there's even less blood flow, less blood circulation, and it's bad for your health. So they're trying to make the argument to airline companies that you can't just force people and cram people into these seats because it's really bad for them.
I love this. I mean, I think that's the right idea because you see some of those new plane models, and it looks like something out of the Matrix where they're just harvesting humans in planes, and it's like, if this is what the future of flying is, count me out.
Count me out.
Because I am not here to just be pressed up in a box. You know, I mean, the experience is scary enough for some people, but if you make it even more onerous and stressful, the only people that are going to be flying are going to be people that have to do it.
Right.
And that's going to make it even worse because there will be no leisure involved in the act unless you are super rich, which would be terrible.
Flying is not that much fun anymore.
No.
It's just not that much fun.
Absolutely not. I'm with you. All right. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate that.
You got it.
Now, of course, there's a lot more going on than just taxes and all sorts of other things. We've got a little thing we like to call a presidential campaign, race, election, what have you going on. And Hillary came out and what did she do? She launched her logo yesterday. She's done a lot of things. We'll get into her later. But on the other side is, of course, the GOP. And say what you want and think what you want about each of the individual characters. There's still very much a race to be run here. We've got Marco Rubio, who's in things. We've got Jeb Bush, who's in things. And we've got Chris Christie. Now, Chris Christie is a bit, to me, he's a bit of a different character because his personality is so outsized that if he decides he wants to get into this race, he's dealing with a little bit of a different component than everybody else. Jeb Bush is, of course, a legacy politician. Everybody knows who he is. He was the governor of Florida. He was the president's brother. His dad was obviously president. He comes from, for lack of a better term, a political dynasty. He holds one place as sort of the elder statesman in this race. Rubio is positioning himself as sort of the Forrest Gump of the GOP. He'd like everybody to believe that he comes from some sort of aw shucks background and he just sort of found his way into politics because he couldn't believe how, I don't even know, how messed up the world was in Washington. Christie's a little bit more of a pugnacious type. He comes from New Jersey, so he's obviously a bit more of a fighter just in terms of who he is. He's got views that a lot of people don't necessarily consider super far right for a GOP guy. And just yesterday, he said that he offered up what I would consider a very controversial stance for a lot of GOP people. Headline in the Wall Street Journal, Chris Christie calls for raising the age for Social Security and cutting the benefit for some seniors. In New Hampshire speech, New Jersey governor proposes overhaul of Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. Peter, I don't think that's going to gain him any favors amongst many right-leaning voters. You know, it's funny. A year and a half ago, Chris Christie, I think if you had asked, 10 people who the GOP frontrunner was, I think 7 or 8 of them would have said Chris Christie. And he's been in this weird kind of free fall plummet for the last year and a half, maybe a little bit longer. He picks weird battles. He picks really weird battles. Really well said. He really picks weird battles. And this one, I mean, he's going to have to do something to get back in the spotlight because the 2016, the GOP primary anyway, has kind of passed him by. Yeah. You never hear his name in the mix. And so he's going to have to make a big splash somehow, some way. I'm not sure that this is it. I don't think so either. But I do think this is the kind of thing that if he, I think what his goal here is to find that who might be a Democrat who might consider, hey, look, I don't know that I'm up for the Clinton machine. We're going to talk about this a little bit more. 866-55-PRESS, 866-5577. You've got 3 options on the GOP side. Now, I know Christie hasn't announced yet, but I'm going to go ahead and have to assume, just for the sake of the game, that he's in the race. Let's assume he's running. Right. Yeah. We've got Chris Christie, sort of the Tony Soprano of this, if you will, not to cast aspersions on what he does with his personal life. Marco Rubio, the Forrest Gump of this, and then Jeb Bush, who's kind of the foghorn leghorn of this, if you will. Which one of these 3 guys do you think can actually beat Hillary or whomever the Democratic nominee may be? I want to get your phone calls on this. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Personally, I don't know the answer to this right now. I mean, I don't either. I think it's really difficult to say because I want to see how they deal with each other. All 3 of these characters are so different, but they're still all very much, richer, older men. So it's sort of hard to say. But 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. It's tax day. My name is Clinton Yates, and I'm filling in for Bill Press. I also happen to be a columnist for the Washington Post, which is the city from which this show is broadcast, right here on Capitol Hill, the most powerful city in the world. We'll be back.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job, and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand, and they don't get it, and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post, filling in here for Bill Press on Tax Day 2015. I want to thank you for tuning in. If you're watching on Free Speech TV or TawkrTV on YouTube, or listening anywhere across the nation on your progressive radio station. We're talking about the GOP and who is going to compete against Hillary Clinton for the next seat in the White House in 2016. Got three people that are sort of leading the cause right now, if you will. I want to get this tweet from our favorite Mama for Obama, who says she thinks I'm missing one person, which is Scott Walker. I don't really consider him that much of a threat, to be quite honest, but that's an aside. So we've got Marco Rubio, we've got Jeb Bush, excuse me, and we've got Chris Christie, 1-866-55-PRESS, 1-866-557-7377. Want to get your thoughts. Who do you think actually can beat her? And who do you think is going to come out of this? Stuart in Boca Raton, how are you this morning? Boca Raton, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Let me just say, as a person living in Florida, Marco Rubio is the biggest cretin of all time. He lied for 34 years about when his parents came here. They did not come here to escape Castro. They left when Batista was still in office, and they came here for an economic advantage like most immigrants do. He also got caught as the head of the GOP in Florida, got caught using the GOP's American Express card and putting his own, for his own personal use, and only when he got caught did he admit it and pay the money back. As far as Jeb Bush goes, he's made tremendous mistakes. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest ones was converting to becoming a Catholic. You may not, it doesn't bother me, but a lot of the evangelicals consider someone that's a Catholic, that's like a cult. The other thing is he's for immigration reform, which I am, but the Republican Party is not, and he's for Common Core, which makes sense, but those redneck hooples aren't for it at all. So he's not going to get the nomination. Chris Christie does not have the demeanor to lead this country and deal with world leaders. So all those guys are out. Cruz doesn't have a chance. Scott Walker, some of those people in his office are going to be indicted. I don't know who. Dr. Ben Carson is a black. I mean, you didn't get into him, but he's a black doctor who said that Obamacare is worse than slavery for blacks. When you listen to what the Republicans are saying, and then with this religious freedom malarkey, just to use their bigotry and racism, I mean, this creep Reince Priebus used, they had an autopsy, and they're going to need an autopsy on the autopsy. They don't have any legitimate candidates that can run right now.
Stuart, take a breath. How are you?
Man.
And I think it's going to be an absolute joke.
Okay, we'll throw that.
All right, thank you very much, Stuart. I guess the race is over. I mean, I don't even know why we're even going through with all this. Man, that was a great phone call right there. But he threw out a couple other names, Ted Cruz, as well as Scott Walker, that are in the mix. I mean, again, there are plenty of people that are going to run. The question is whether or not these people are viable candidates. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Who do you think is coming out of the GOP race, and who do you think can beat Hillary? Kevin in Chicago, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Glenn. How you doing?
I'm well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a really mixed bag right now. I mean, Christie is, I think he's fallen out of favor as that guy, so he's going to go out there, maybe play on his past association with Obama, with Sandy, get enough of the centrist Democrats, that might consider him. But the problem is he's got to win the nomination first.
Yeah.
That depends upon who comes out on the Republican side to vote. The hard right-wing base is always going to show up. So it just depends upon who shows up with them and can they outnumber them. Let's face it, Bush is establishment Republican. I think Scott Walker's going to make a rise. I really do. I think he's got a lot of Coke money behind him. And I think the rest of them are just a little bit too out there. Cruz is an idiot. He's a smart guy, but he's so far out. Once people really get to know him, I think he's going to be toast.
Right.
But it just depends who shows up on the Republican primary. This ain't like Louisiana or wherever it was where the senator went and got a bunch of Democrats to vote for him to win the re-election.
Exactly. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the phone call. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Another name I did not bring up, Mr. Paul, because I do not consider that guy to be very serious on any level. I don't know about you, Peter.
No, there are a couple guys running because it's good for business.
Yeah, but that's
Rand Paul being one of them.
That's a very good way of putting that. He keeps the lights on because that's the only way that they're going to stay relevant in this 24-hour media landscape. Speaking of that, when we get back, we'll discuss that and how it's going to affect Hillary. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. I'm filling in for Bill Press.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the area.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's gonna do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Did you watch Hillary's video?
I did not yet, no.
You haven't watched it?
I've not watched it yet. Good for her, you know? Everybody who wants to run for president should have the chance to. We'll see how she does.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Good for her and good for you. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist at the Washington Post, filling in here for Bill Press on the Bill Press Show. It's Wednesday, April 15th, Tax Day 2015. What you were just listening to there was Mr. Chris Christie. Where was he, Peter?
He was in New Hampshire.
He was in New Hampshire
he was on
when
the
he was
road.
asked that. Of course, he was on the road discussing Hillary Clinton, who announced that she would be running for president, and there was quite a bit of news surrounding her yesterday. She had a lot of the millennials and the Nintendo generation having a lot of fun with her new logo, which is I don't know. I mean, what? Not to get too far into the graphic design component of life here, but what did you think about it, Peter?
I think it could have been better.
I think it could have been a lot better.
Do I think it's going to sink her campaign? No. But it's for those who haven't seen it, it's an H with a red arrow crossing the H. And a lot of people have pointed out that it's pointing to the right instead of to the left.
Okay.
You know, like there's a lot of things that I took a look at. I just go, I'm not all that excited about it.
It's Hillary. I preferred her previous one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was better. And my favorite one, which featured Hillary from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on the poster. It was really good, really good too. But she's in the race now, which means you got to take things a little bit more seriously. Every little thing becomes a lot more of an issue. I mean, we're seeing things like security cam footage of her at Chipotle.
Look,
which was beyond bizarre to me.
Story is clown shoes crazy. It is really insane to me.
Because if that's as friend of the show, Travis Waldron said on Twitter the other day, said, we're not making it to 2016. I'm not going to make it.
It's
just not going to work. I mean, I really don't understand how that happens. But my point is that every little thing she does now is being very much scrutinized. And one of the stories that I read from Politico, which to me is fascinating, from Politico magazine, headline, Chelsea's Invisible Hand. An inside report on the shadowy role of Hillary's most important advisor. Now, I'm not going to get into the phraseology of how these headlines are written, but the story goes on to discuss what Chelsea Clinton's role is in this presidency and about how Bill, in fact, is being pushed aside as sort of a member of her team that people want to see. It's actually a very fascinating story, but what's oddball about the tone, and I would recommend that you read it, what's oddball about the tone is this notion that there's somehow something wrong with Chelsea being a big part of the campaign. I mean, shadowy has a very negative connotation that, Peter, I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think a lot of people might still see Chelsea as just as the daughter of Bill and Hillary Clinton, but she's a grown woman now. She's very active.
She's been a grown woman.
Yeah. And there was some talk in 2008 about kids are off limits on the campaign trail. We really shouldn't get into some of these. There was a whole thing about.
Yeah, but she's not a kid.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing.
That's where you have to figure out where you draw the line. But I mean, I think it's safe to say now she's a grown woman. She's indicated that she would like to go into public service, would like to go into politics. I'm sure that they're cognizant of the fact that she's going to have more face time and things like that. So there's nothing weird about, or shadowy about her working on the campaign.
This to me is nothing but positive. And I think that it also lends to a decent trend, which is, my kids are actually smart and engaging people rather than just props for me to stick up on stage. Now, I understand if we're dealing with children. I understand if we're dealing with teenagers. I even understand it if we're dealing with college students, Bushes, But my point is that for a lot of people who are looking at what the office of the presidency is and how it's sort of changing from what so-called traditional values are. A lot of people look at Michelle Obama, oh, she's not a traditional first lady. Yeah, well, you know what? That's because the tradition is the problem here. And if you look at how things might be, what things are moving toward, the idea of a working grandmother in the White House on multiple levels has positives. It's not just because that it's different from what it's been that it's necessarily something wrong. I really like the idea of Chelsea Clinton being very heavily involved in Hillary Clinton's campaign from not just a policy standpoint, but also just an image standpoint. I mean, I think that there are very obvious bonuses to this that if you just sort of write off, I think are a very foolish political calculation, because a lot of people, not just younger voters, but I think older voters who are probably in Hillary's position, who, trust their children, are going to like the fact that that's something that she's willing to do in order to advance this country. I don't think that it's an automatic bad thing to think that Hillary is not up there just upon Mount High making every single decision for herself. I mean, that sounds obvious, but by the same token, this is what part of being, I would say, quite frankly, a good mom is about. You know how to involve everybody there to best utilize your resources and not just sort of alienate yourself as the lone brain in the room. Am I nuts on this, Pete?
No, I think you're spot on. I think it's really interesting to see where Hillary Clinton has gone. right? Because I think the 2008 campaign was one of the worst run campaigns, her campaign. It was terribly run. And you could tell the difference in her announcement video when she was running in 2008 versus the announcement video when she was running this time around. The 2008 video was nothing but her sitting in a chair talking about why she wanted to be president or why she thought she was going to be the best choice. And it was very much came from that point of view of it's my time and I am your choice. I am your choice. And this time around, it's like a 2-minute, 13-second video. I don't think you see Hillary Clinton or hear her voice until 1:47 in. It's all about people. Yeah. It's all about what people want to do and how they want to move forward. And I don't mean this in any kind of superficial way necessarily, but she looked great. She looked rested. She looked excited. She looked like she had learned something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you mean in terms of just what it takes to really get through this process? Because back then, a lot of people were like, Obama,
right?
What's this guy gonna do? He's got zero experience.
And I guess the what I'm trying to get at is the first time around it was Hillary, the saint for Democrats. Here she comes. It's her time. She deserves to be president. We all owe her our vote. And I think this time around, she's, like taking other ideas from other people. She's driving to Iowa. Yeah. She's not doing a big campaign rally yet. She's listening to people. She's getting some ideas. And I realize a lot of that is optics, but it's something that not everybody gets right.
Yeah, no.
So she's doing a pretty good job with it.
I agree. And, I'm a fan of hers, not necessarily in political context, but just in a human context, because she has really accomplished so much and is really quite as crazy as this is to say, I think just an underrated character in what's going to be the overall stretch of what is American history. And I think that, and this is one place where Bill and I actually disagree, I don't necessarily think that some long, drag-out primary process necessarily helps her at this point. I mean, I did at one point, but I'm not sure that I've sort of flip-flopped on this a couple times. And at this point, I just think that she needs to be able to show people that she can connect to the American folks, which is what she's trying to do. Let's hear what she had to say in Iowa, where she said, "This is what I'm here for, as opposed to just a coronation."
I'm going to work hard to meet as many people. I'll be rolling out ideas and policies about what I think will work, but I want it to be informed by what's actually working and to build on what works going forward.
You can hear all those camera flashes in the background. One of the reasons for that is because there's not a big crowd there. She's sitting amongst 20 to 25, 35, 45 people. She's really, really scaled down her message and her approach, and I think it's going to do her well going forward.
What's interesting about all this to me, more than anything, is, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, but the Clintons are going to do whatever the Clintons want to do. And that's just how they've always done it, and they've been very successful at it, so that's not a knock. But this is a new thing. This is new territory for Hillary Clinton. And so it was very interesting to see how she adjusted, because she couldn't do the things that she would normally do in launching this campaign. So I think she's off to a very, very, very good start.
She's come down from what is the perceived Mount High for a lot of people, which I think is a very, very smart political campaign. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm filling in for Bill Press here. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this and some other things regarding the White House with USA Today correspondent David Jackson. It's tax day. Be happy. There's a reason you pay taxes. Trust me, it could be worse. I'm Clinton Yates. It's the Bill Press Show.
Connect with the Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is the Bill Press Show.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
You know, sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily looking out and seeing all these water-wasting lawns and people that aren't as connected to their neighbors and their lives as they could be. I'm walking down the street looking, going, edible oases, rainwater, fed landscape, and just looking at the possibility of these sort of landscapes up and down the streets of neighborhoods and communities all across this world. Small actions do ripple, and they add up, and they have a cumulative impact. And so when you're building upon your small, mindful actions, you know, you have the confidence and the ability to take on something a little bit greater. So that could be nice. This, in the context of where we're at as a planet with climate change and these really big issues, and people that are more disconnected and less skilled than ever, it becomes even more amazing and powerful how much of a solution this is to design these ecological gardens and to come together with shared vision and shared voice. There's never been a time where your choices have mattered more. Doing something as simple as us transforming a landscape creates a model that anybody can look at far and wide, and you're sharing food and connecting and building skills together in your own neighborhood. It's a richer way to live in normal times, but in the new normal of climate change and erratic weather and economic upheaval, it becomes essential. Whether it's me, you, Gandhi, Che, MLK, Willy Wonka, whoever, past, present, or future, the power of our daily actions is all that we have. You know, and like our community said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. And that's what those simple actions do. They move the world every day.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here for Bill Press. I want to thank everybody for listening here on tax day. If you're otherwise stressed out, I hope this can give you some information that you might like. On the line, we got White House correspondent for USA Today, David Jackson. You can find him on Twitter at DJUSA Today. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm well. So I'll start it off basically. Do we have an Iran deal or what?
I think we're going to get one, but there's going to be a lot of twists and turns on this little road here over the next 2.5 months. The parties have till June 30th to try to work out the final details of an agreement with Iran, and there are a few challenges. I mean, the Iranians are saying they won't sign anything unless they get immediate sanctions relief. The U.S. says it wants to gradually phase in sanctions relief depending on how Iran does. So you got that situation. The Russians have already basically ended their embargo against Iran. They're selling them weapons. So, and then of course got Congress weighing. You know, it looks like the Congress is going to approve a situation where they get to review whatever deal is completed. So it's going to be a rough road, but I still think he's going to wind up with something.
So Bob Corker is at the middle of a lot of this, and there's a lot of details about the new bill. I mean, what exactly? Can you break down some of those details about what are the specific holdups?
Well, the basic deal, the deal the Senate's going to probably sign off on this week, it gives the Congress the right to review the Iran deal, but not until the deal is actually signed. You know, the White House had been concerned that Congress was going to try to slap new sanctions on Iran before these negotiations were even completed. Well, that's off the table now. Congress will wait until there's an actual deal, and then they'll get 30 days to review it. before the U.S. can lift any sanctions off of Iran. And they could conceivably vote against the deal, but the way the deal is structured, it'd be very difficult to actually defeat it, because even if, let's say that the U.S. and Iran sign an agreement by the end of June and Congress votes against it, President Obama can veto that opposition, and then it would take 2/3 of the Senate to override that veto. So, yes, Congress does have the right to review the deal, but I think it'd be very difficult for them to kill it in the long run.
We're talking with White House correspondent for USA Today, David Jackson, here on the Bill Press Show. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm filling in. Switching gears a little bit here. Hillary is obviously running for president, and the president has said a couple things about that. What kind of a tap dance do you think the White House is doing around this situation, as the two of them, meaning Hillary and Barack, are obviously, friends on some level, but also once ran against each other?
Well, that's true, but I think the two principals really are friendly. I do think Obama and Clinton themselves do get along. I think their staffs aren't so friendly anymore. There's still some of that rivalry. You talk to people in the White House, and you still hear some cracks about Clinton, and then you talk to some Clintonites, and you'll still hear some questions about Obama. But I think that the two principals do get along. The president probably isn't going to endorse anybody in a Democratic primary at this point. I mean, there's no reason for him to, especially given the fact that Joe Biden may still jump into this race. So he's going to hold up. But you're right; it's obvious that they like each other. In fact, this week's the White House, President Obama this week is talking about working families agenda, and the things they're talking about are very similar to the things that candidate Clinton is talking about. So I don't think there's outright coordination, but there is an alignment of interest, shall we say, between the White House and the Clinton campaign.
Well, that's very convenient. That works out well.
It does work out.
All parties involved.
They just talked in the White House just last month. We don't know what they said to each other, but you can't help but think that she talked a little bit about her rollout.
All right, I'm going to get you out here on this, as one famous guy likes to say. The president has found his way to the great state of South Dakota.
Yes, well, he will. May 8th. That'll be the 50th
May
state.
8th. May 8th. So let me ask you, what is the purpose of all 50 states in your opinion? I mean, listen, I get it, but how important is this really to the White House?
No, I don't. I think it's just something that I think he feels obligated to do. Clinton did it. George H.W. Bush did it in one term, which I find quite remarkable. And Richard Nixon, of all people, was the first president to do this. I mean, given air travel, given the fact that you're the president of all the people. In Obama's case, it's a little bit easier because he has a home in Hawaii, so it's easy to check off that state. It's a little hard for most people to get there. Why not? I mean, it's in this particular case, he's going to South Dakota because to give a college commencement. He gives a college commencement at a community college every year, and this year he just happened to pick one in South Dakota because it was the only state he hadn't visited. I mean, it's a little quirky thing. Now, in recent months, he at the start of the year he had 46 states down, and so he wanted to do the last 4 just because it was there. But all 4 of these states are Republican-leaning states, and I think that the White House says that he wants to try to deliver his message in these Republican-leaning states and perhaps pick up a few votes for Democrats down the line.
All right. Well, thank you, David.
All right, sir. Thank you.
All right, man. Have a good day. It's
right,
David Jackson, White House correspondent for USA Today, talking all things White House. There's going to be a great photo op in South Dakota when the president finally gets there. God knows what he's going to do. I certainly don't. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bill Press here. It's tax day. Fill them out. It's the right thing to do.
This is the Bill Press Show.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight. It's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist at the Washington Post, filling in for Bill here on Tax Day 2015. Also happens to be the 150th anniversary of the assassination, or rather the death, of Lincoln. People forget that he was shot on one day and he died the next in the house across the street. You ever been to that house, Peter?
I have.
It's a very interesting little piece of tourist trivia. Like, it's for those that don't know, Abraham Lincoln was shot at the Ford's Theater, which is on 11th Street, 10th Street Northwest. It's downtown in D.C., but there's a house across the street which is its own national. It's a tourist site. And it's where he actually died, where they took him and they kept him, and then by the next day or whatever morning it was that he died. And it's a little tiny house, little tiny row house amongst all these big buildings now that's there. And it's, on some levels, it's more interesting than Ford's Theater, because Ford's Theater
really
is just, another place.
I mean, they still do plays and musical things like that there. It's still functioning.
And today, they're doing a grand recreation of his inauguration, I believe. So you're going to see a lot of people if you're in the district, you're going to see a lot of people in period costumes and things like that, which is always fun because nobody dresses like that anymore.
Well,
obviously.
you get to play your favorite game. Is it a hipster or is it a Lincoln impersonator?
Like, is this person actually a Lincoln impersonator, or are they just doing something else? But another thing that's apparently being done, and I've heard this, and I'm not entirely sure how well this is going to be attended, but a lot of churches at 8 a.m. in the morning. We're coming up on 7 o'clock here Eastern time in the district, but at 8 a.m. they're going to play their bells to commemorate the death of Lincoln. So if you're above ground, stop and listen. It's an important moment in American history, and Lincoln is obviously a figure that is not going to be equaled anytime soon on the canon of American presidents, at least not as far as I think. But anyway, it's the anniversary of his death, so it's something we commemorate because this is what we do in the United States of America. We'll be back.
This is The Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years, that the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up and built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
And my name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist at the Washington Post, filling in for Bill Press here on Wednesday, April 15th, 2015. It's tax day. So if you're not doing those, you should probably get to that. That's just a little piece of advice there. In case
if you haven't gotten them, your timing is terrible.
Come knocking on your door. You can listen to us on the iHeartRadio app or, of course, the TuneIn app using the Progressive Voices channel. You can watch us on youtube.com/TawkrTV or on Free Speech TV. You can give us a phone call at 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. The other voice you heard there was that of one Peter Ogburn. How are you, Peter?
Happy Wednesday, Clinton.
Happy Wednesday to you, too. Happy tax day to everybody. If you give that phone number a call again, 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377, you will talk to Alicia Cruz. And if you're watching us on one of the aforementioned stations, one Cyprian Bolding is the one that is making that happen. You can, of course, tweet us at BP Show, or you can tweet me at Clinton Yates. That's always an option, too. I'm verified, so you'll know it's me if you send me a tweet. That's an inside joke there that I'm not going to get into, but you know where it is. So we've been talking about GOP candidates for the presidency today, and one guy in particular is standing out because of his personal story is pretty interesting, and some people are fans of it, some people aren't, but his personality is coming out a lot in this race, and that is one Marco Rubio. He likes to think of him, by the way, let's not forget that the water grab is well behind him now.
Well behind him.
Well behind him. So anybody wants to keep that alive, feel free. But that move, which is when he first burst onto the national scene, the water grab heard around the world, that's well behind him. And now he's walking around, he's telling people about all sorts of different things. Like what kind of, I guess he's coming to D.C. today? Or was he here yesterday?
He landed yesterday.
He landed yesterday, and a TMZ camera got in his face, and he said this.
What are you feeling right now? You good artists?
You know, electronic music. I've gotten into it a little bit with David Guetta and all that. I think they're, Axel and Grosso and the Swedish House Mafia and all those guys. And I'm still a Nicki Minaj fan.
Okay,
I'm very talented.
Okay, man. Right. Thanks so much, man. Have a good one.
Very talented, Nicki Minaj is. You know who else thinks Nicki Minaj is very talented? 15-year-old boys across the country. But
Dude.
No, am I really supposed to believe that Marco Rubio is out here in these EDM streets? Because I don't.
I'm a big fan of Nicki Minaj and this Snoopy Dogg, and
hold on.
We're a big fan of.
I don't need him to sound like an MTV VJ when he says artist names. It's just the convenience with which he seems to name drop very specifically popular artists is a little
almost
too
as
convenient.
if they were scripted.
Yeah, how could it be?
Weird.
I happen to be listening to a lot of Swedish House Mafia.
Oh, glad you asked me about my kind of music. I'll name some artists in the genre that I just mentioned.
Like, I don't know. Listen, the guy's story is a very interesting one, and I don't want to take away from his narrative because I do think there's something to be said for the fact that he's not coming from a rich family. He is, on some levels, a relatively normal guy. What the actual specificity of that is, who knows? But is he in these EDM streets? No. I'm not believing that until I see him with a glow stick at a party, jumping around when the beat drops.
Yeah.
Okay? That's all there is to that. Anyway, on the line, we have senior writer for Politico magazine, Michael Grunwald. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael Grunwald. How are you this morning, Michael?
Hey, I'm good. How you doing, Clinton?
I'm well. Tell me something I don't know about Marco Rubio.
Well, it's funny. You're talking about he does like hip hop. You know, they've been putting out the word that he can spit. I think that's bogus.
Really, he can spit.
That guy, he's. You know, I see him. I watched him teach his class at Bard International University, and he showed up in the dad jeans. He's a very personable guy. It was funny watching him teach the class. He's very careful in public to kind of cover up the political animal part of himself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where he's just here to talk policy, serious stuff. With his class, he was incredible. He was like, all right, this is not a good government class. This is a politics class. And he kind of explained how he sucked up to become Speaker of the House in Tallahassee, about how you had to become friends with the right people, and you had to make sure your kids were friends with their friends, and you had to, send birthday cards to their wives, all that kind of thing. So he's definitely a political animal. He claims he likes NWA. Which is age appropriate. I remember listening to it in my freshman dorm, but I don't, I've never seen him spit, and I don't really know anybody who has.
So there's a lot there. Obviously his personality is a big part of sort of how he's presenting himself. But I think there's people that might be worried that he might overshadow his actual politics. You talked about his, him being sort of a bear politically. I mean, for those who don't know, what is this guy really about when it comes to his policy and his lawmaking beyond what music he listens to and what clothes he wears?
Well, I think in a way that's sort of what makes him such, I think, a powerful and, if you're a Republican, and dangerous if you're a Democrat candidate, right? He's basically for complete Republican orthodoxy on policy, the sort of belligerent foreign policy, tax cuts for economic policy, less social spending, kind of Christian conservative with a little less edge than it used to be on social policy. The one area where he's strayed a little bit was immigration reform, but now he's kind of walked that back some. But what he brings, though, if you like Mitt Romney's policies, but you wish it was a more charismatic messenger with a much more compelling personal background who's more attractive to the fastest-growing demographic in America, which is Latinos, right? He's a guy. He's met with a really nice, fresh, younger, magnetic face. And so that could be really powerful for Republicans who want to win.
Is that basically his best asset at this point, frankly, his heritage? I mean, do you think that we had a caller earlier that was basically like his whole sort of backstory around Cuba and this, that, and the third was bogus. But, how much do you think that his heritage plays in his ability to potentially win this nomination? And do you think maybe that some of this fact-checking might actually catch up with him?
Well, look, I mean, his narrative is not, I mean, it's true that he used to sort of call himself an exile, which isn't, his parents were exiles, when in fact they came a few years before Castro. But the fact is they lost their country, and he's got an incredible backstory. I don't see why anybody's trying to really chip away at that. His parents were not, and like you said, they were poor people who came here and try to live the American dream. His dad was a bartender. His mom was a hotel maid, and they wanted a better life for him. I think he's been torn on this immigration stuff. When I was at Time Magazine, I did that cover story, The Republican Savior, one about him in 2013, and his mom, and he played me a voicemail from his mom, who had called him and said, Tony, she called him Tony, not Marco. She said, Tony, what in Spanish? She said, whatever you do, don't hurt the immigrants. They're people, they're just like us, these poor people, and they just want a better life. And I think that is a really compelling story when he talked about it in his announcement, when he talked about how his dad was behind the bar and he worked so hard so that he could be behind the podium. That's not bogus. That's real, and that's compelling. I think the question that people ask about him is then why do you want a $4 trillion tax cut that's, way tilted towards, people at the upper end of the scale? Why do you want to get rid of the estate tax? Why do you want to get rid of capital gains taxes?
What are you hearing about his chances? I mean, it sounds like he's got a pretty good chance to win the Republican nomination. Beating someone like Hillary in the general is a totally different matter. What are you hearing about that? I mean, is this maybe a run for him to get his name out there, from what you're understanding, or does his team and do the Republicans think he's probably got a genuine shot to get to the White House?
Well, I think he thinks he can win. I first met Marco when he was running against Charlie Crist here in Florida, and he was at 3% in the polls. He was running 40 points behind in the Republican primary. And one reason I have a good relationship with him is because I kind of followed him around for a couple of days, and I was like, oh, my God, this guy's going to win because he's a Republican. And in 2010, Republicans won a Republican, and Charlie Crist really wasn't. But he didn't really care. He didn't care where he was polling. He was going to beat the odds. And I think he feels the same way today. It is true that if it doesn't work out for him, he's got a good chance of being he could be on the ticket anyway. If that doesn't work out for him, he can run for governor in a midterm in 2018. And it is true that for Republicans, there is a sense like it's your turn, so it never hurts to run and lose, and then you get nominated the next time. So I think this is not a huge risk for him politically. But I also think just because he's polling in the low single digits does not mean that he isn't going to rise. He feels like, his time can come. And against Hillary, I mean, he'd probably start out as an underdog, but certainly if you're Hillary, he's got to be a little worried about the idea that he runs as the future against the past. He'd probably rather run against Jeb Bush, when then it's kind of like the crappy past against the good past, right?
All right. So what's next for Rubio?
Well, I think he's still in the Senate, so he gets to talk about his foreign policy issues. Cuba's going to be a really big one, obviously, where he's maybe out of step with where the country is on Cuba, but not necessarily the kind of conservatives who come out in a Republican primary. He's going to be talking about Iran, and he can compete in all of the, he doesn't have a real, sense that he can't compete in Iowa, or he grew up in Nevada, so that's a good early state for him. South Carolina is pretty conservative. There's a sense right now that, that he used to be in the Tea Party lane, but now maybe that's Rand Paul and Ted Cruz are there, and there's a sense that he's kind of establishment, but that right now seems to be Deb's lane. And the fresh new face these days is Scott Walker. But I think the sense in the Rubio team is that he's acceptable to all those lanes, and that he's kind of right now he could sort of be everybody's second choice. And that once he gets on stage with some of these guys, that they're not that afraid of Scott Walker, and they think that Rubio, who's this guy who is, he's smart, he's shrewd, he speaks fluent Republican in a way that Mitt Romney kind of spoke it as a second language. That he's going to be very attractive. He does kind of light up a room.
All right, thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate it.
Anytime, Clinton.
All right. It's Michael Grunwald, senior writer for Politico magazine. You can find him on Twitter at Michael Grunwald, and his work is obviously online at Politico.com. Want to get your thoughts on Rubio? 866-55-PRESS. 866-557-7377. I know we were talking a little junk about him earlier and his musical taste and all that, but the guy's got a pretty good shot. And if you look at his politics compared to a lot of other people, could be the guy that you want if you're not necessarily going the Hillary route. I'm Clinton Yates, The Bill Press Show. We'll be right back.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job, and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand, and they don't get it, and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
And my name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. I see we got the EDM bump music here for the Marco Rubio segment. Talking about Marco Rubio and what he's like as a guy. I mean, he's kind of a different Republican candidate. Want to get your thoughts. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. What do you think of this guy? He says he listens to Swedish House Mafia, Nicki Minaj, NWA. He's got all sorts of interesting sort of policies and looks. He definitely doesn't come from the 1% background that a lot of different people come from who run for political office. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Darrell in Louisiana? I'm not going to even say the name of that town. How you doing this morning?
I'm all right. I'm in Mamou, Louisiana. I just wanted to say that Marco Rubio, to me, is basically like a joke. After he made those comments, after President Obama talked about being friends with the Cubans again, and then before that, he had the sip of water on TV. He just looked like a buffoon, and basically I think that everything he does is just to satisfy his base. And he's off point off on a lot of messages, so I just wanted to say that.
All right, thank you, Darrell. Appreciate the phone call. Mamou, Louisiana. I have no idea where that. Do you know where that is?
I do not.
I don't know where that is either. Got a tweet here from @NotAYacht, which says, Florida is in shambles with Marco Rubio's policies, plus no one ever answers his phone, and his voicemail is always full. That's annoying. Can't deal with people whose voicemails are always full. That's not a good policy to have, or not a good quality to have if you're a politician when your voicemail box is always full.
No, that's bad.
My sister's big on that. She always has her voicemail full, and I call her, and I'm like, what? Why have the voicemail that's always full? Anyway, 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Jeff in Hartford, your thoughts on Marco Rubio?
He's the same old thing in terms of tax policy. He's going to put us right back in the same place that we were after both Bushes. And he talks about state-sponsored terrorism from Cuba, but I just don't see it.
You're not enthralled by his magnetic personality?
No. For me, the policy is more important than the personality.
Right. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate the phone call. Again, I think that, there's a policy factor here, but I think there's a decent amount of people that don't necessarily just care about that. I mean, I think there's something to this notion of, him being an attractive character. And I don't necessarily mean that in the sense of Democrats. I mean in the sense of getting younger Republicans out to vote so that in strict numbers, you gain your electorate. I don't think it's a matter of sort of switching people over from side to side. I think it's a matter of being more popular within your own base and therefore getting more people to vote, which is, for a lot of young conservatives, something they haven't had in a long time.
It's a very interesting moment for conservatives, right? Because one of the arguments that's being made by guys like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, their argument is, well, Republicans lost the last two presidential elections because we didn't get a candidate who was conservative enough. And you also have other folks out there like a Marco Rubio or a Chris Christie who, look, are plenty conservative, but are like a new generation or have a little more of an open mind than other Republicans. It's not saying that there's any kind of an endorsement there, but it's an interesting time to see where Republicans are going to go. They're going to go even farther to the right than they did last time, or maybe try something a little bit more modern.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, but that would be a new thing for them. But I just want to read this tweet before we get out of here. It's from Candy Apple Alley. It says, Marco Rubio's campaign logo looks like it's for a discount lingerie store. That is news to me because I've never been to a discount lingerie store.
If you're going to go to one.
If you're going to go to one, maybe ask Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. We'll be back. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm filling in for Bill Press. It's tax day.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
And my name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post, filling in for Bill here on April 15th, 2015. On the line, we've got the Atlantic's David Graham. You can find him on Twitter at GrahamDavidA. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Clinton.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Pretty good. So, we've been talking about GOP candidates all morning for the Republican nomination for president. So I want to switch gears and talk about the Dems. Hillary is obviously in the race, but there are a lot of other names that people are sort of considering that are going to get out there. Martin O'Malley here locally is one of them. There's other names. Tell me a little bit about the field on the left side of the aisle that could be challenging Hillary.
It's still sort of a question of whether there's a field or not. You know, there are these guys who are talking about it, but whether anyone's going to make a serious run, I think, is still tough to tell. I mean, O'Malley seems like he's for real. he's running. He's doing things. He's out there. He's taking sort of veiled shots at Clinton. Bernie Sanders doesn't seem to be doing a great deal. And Elizabeth Warren, of course, keeps saying she's not going to run. So, I still think it's an open question how much of a challenge she's going to get. But it looks like not a great deal right now.
So let's go through each of those guys. We've got Martin O'Malley, who obviously was the mayor of Baltimore and the governor of Maryland. I mean, what is his angle, do you think, to get into this, just as far as what his national profile would be to a lot of people?
Well, one of the funny things about O'Malley is I think he has a pretty good claim on being a progressive challenger to Clinton, but he hasn't really been taking up that banner so much. He hasn't been courting the sort of Elizabeth Warren fans. He says he's a technocratic governor. He gets things done. That's his brand. He's a problem solver. And he's, his main selling point so far as I can tell, is we really ought to have a contested nomination, and that's why people should support me so that we can have a real primary.
All right. Up next, we got Bernie Sanders. He's from Vermont? Am I right?
Yep.
All right. What are his? Vermont is a relatively obscure state as far as national politics are concerned. What's his deal? I mean, what are his politics, and where is he coming from?
Well, Bernie's about as far left as you're going to get. He's not actually. He's in the Democratic caucus and the Senate, but he's a socialist. He's been a socialist for years. He's very populist. He's anti-bank. He's pro-growing entitlements. You name it. But the thing about Sanders is he's not much of a politician, I would say. He tends to say exactly what he thinks. He can get cranky with questions he thinks are, foolish. He doesn't have a lot of stomach for fundraising. And so he's been talking about running for months now. But he was interviewed in March and about where his campaign was. And he was basically saying, I kind of hate fundraising. I haven't done a great deal of that. So it's hard for me to tell how serious he is, whether he's in the race because he thinks there need to be those issues or whether he's going to mount much of a serious effort. I don't think he thinks he's going to be president, nor does anybody else. But I think the question is what kind of symbolism he can get out of a campaign.
Fair enough. And, of course, there's Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, who is probably the largest name outside of this. I mean, where do you think she is right now at this point after Hillary announced?
I think that makes it even harder for her to really go anywhere. She said repeatedly she's not going to run, and you get people parsing, well, how Sherman-esque was it? Was it a total denial, or did she leave a window open? I tend to be pretty skeptical that she left much of a window open, but I don't know anything anyone else doesn't. I'm just reading the same statements.
So that means she's running, if I'm hearing what you're saying, David.
Yeah, there we go.
It means she's in.
She was on the Sunday shows, what was it, 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, and she was saying, it's really important we don't have a coronation. We have to have a candidate. And the obvious end of that statement is, so I'm going to run. But she keeps saying, nope, I'm not going to run. I'm not interested. I don't think that's the role. So I think that's going to be the great progressive hope that got away.
What's it going to take? Because I'm with you, by the way. I'm kind of a little tired of hearing all of the Elizabeth will run after she's been so vocal about how she's not going to run. What's it going to take for people to just say, okay, she's not running?
I don't know. Wait till if she hasn't declared by the Iowa caucus, maybe.
Okay.
So we could be looking at February.
Oh, wow. Jesus.
I mean, here's the thing. She showed herself to be a talented campaigner in that Massachusetts Senate race. But it's hard to know, what kind of presidential candidate she'd be. It's hard to know what sort of national campaign she'd espouse. She might be great or she might be really bad, and no one really knows. So it's a lot of weight to put on one person to think that she is the only thing that can save the country from a Hillary Clinton coronation.
We're talking with the Atlantic's David Graham here. You can follow him on Twitter at GrahamDavidA. Going to switch gears a little bit here to the Cuba scenario. What are we at? Where are we at in terms of them getting removed from the terror blacklist by the president?
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting. Yesterday, you see the Obama administration sort of giving with one hand and taking with another. They sort of gave in on the Iran Congress approval thing, and at the same time said, and also we're going to delist Cuba, which a lot of people in Congress are not pleased about. So there's that. I mean, this is something they can do, and they're going to do it, and I'm interested to see what the fallout is like domestically. But But it seems like a sort of logical move at this point.
Right, but what have sort of some of the criticism been aside from? I mean, we've heard Rubio come out and say, "Well, there's state terrorism," but at this point, I mean, what? I don't want to say reasonable person, but what are the actual arguments against this?
Well, I think you see a lot of people saying there is none. I think you've got to see an example of Cuba sponsoring terror. I think it's important for these lists to mean something, right? If we say these are state sponsors of terror, we need to see what terrorism is. And you don't see Cuba, for example, launching major revolutionary movements across Latin America, which was kind of the reason why they were listed in the first place back in the 80s. And you see people, conservatives and liberals alike, saying this list needs to mean something. Cuba isn't a sponsor of terror. There's no point in having it on the list. I think the major counterpoint you hear is, well, we shouldn't give this away. There should be something in return. I'm not sure what that would be. They're not sponsoring terrorism. That seems like the obvious trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's sort of what my question is here. It's very difficult to understand why this would be such a large issue for opponents when it just seems like you said, the next logical step. I don't really understand what there is to be gained by opposing it, but maybe.
Well, that's like the whole conundrum of Cuba policy, right? The people who care about Cuba really, really care about Cuba being isolated. And a lot of other people have been sort of indifferent to it for a long time. And so you only now see movement because the people who care so much are sort of losing a little bit of grip.
Yeah, all right. We're talking with the Atlantic's David Graham. Thank you, David. Appreciate you getting in here this morning.
Can I just?
Thanks for having me.
I just want to make a quick point. David retweeted the tweet that promoted him on the show during the interview, which is a pretty baller move. That's a big-time move, David.
That's a verified move. That's a verified move is what that is. All right.
Damn it.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
All right, man. You can follow him on Twitter at GrahamDavidA. I want to know what your thoughts are on this Cuba matter. Do you think they should be taken off the terror blacklist? 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Or is there something to be gained by still keeping them on that list? That's a good question. We'll talk about it when we get back. My name's Clinton Yates. I'm filling in for Bill Press. It's tax day.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan.
And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
This is the Bill Press Show.
And my name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post, filling in for Bill here on Tax Day 2015. We're talking about Cuba. I want to get your thoughts on the situation regarding their being taken off the terror blacklist potentially. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. This is something that the president has been looking to do to normalize foreign relations between the two countries. Some of you may know, obviously, that since the Cold War, Cuba's been on the list because of what was then considered state-sponsored terrorism. And as a result, the things have not gone well between the two countries from a diplomatic standpoint for quite some time. If the U.S. were to drop Cuba from the list, it would keep, Iran, Sudan, and Syria as the only three countries that are remaining on it. The idea here would be that if that's the case, Cuba is, loosened up to be able to do banking business with not just this country, but with the International World Bank. They'd be able to establish embassies, something that affects my life very much so here in D.C., because there would be an embassy here, and I guarantee you, Peter, they would throw the best parties. The Cuban embassy would be fantastic place to party.
Believe it. It would be amazing. Yeah.
In favor of that, if for no other reason.
Just invite me. That's
my
all.
social life. Exactly. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. In all seriousness, Tony in Chicago, how are you this morning?
I'm great. It kills me. I was just saying that the hypocrisy of it all. How we've tried to kill Castro how many times? And we're calling them terrorists? Give me a break.
That's a good point.
And it's also even just like the whole nuclear arms thing. We're the only country in the world that's dropped the one on anybody, but we go around telling everybody else what they can't have.
Thank you, Tony.
Blows my mind.
Appreciate the phone call. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Want to get your thoughts on whether or not Cuba should come off of the terror blacklist. I got a friend who's here in the local media, Peter, who's going to Cuba as part of the Smithsonian Cultural Tour.
Oh, cool.
And his theory is that he wants to get down there because this is all inevitable, but he doesn't want, as he says, Starbucks and Marriott to take over the whole thing.
I'm hearing that a lot.
And that's kind of a scary thought, which is that if things happen to open up with the U.S., then all of a sudden, because I don't know that a lot of people necessarily realize what Cuba was before all of this happened. I mean, it was effectively Vegas in the South. And if this, the current state of American commercialism stays true to form, you could see a drastically different nation in a way that I'm not sure necessarily everybody's going to like. Have you been to Cuba?
I have not. And Bill
Where'd you go?
Oh, without a doubt. I'd go in a heartbeat. Yeah, I'd go in a heartbeat.
We could do a remote from down there.
Let's do it. Well, Bill's going in May, I believe. And he's been a couple of times. And he loves it down there.
Yeah.
Bill used to have this, he used to do a little tutorial on how to get to Cuba without getting caught. Right. But now it's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never been, and I've heard that sentiment from a lot of people, and I've seen some writing on it. It's just like, McDonald's is going to take over Cuba.
Which would be sad.
866-55-PRESS,
866-557-7377. Want to get your thoughts on whether or not it should come off the blacklist. Again, this is a no-brainer for me. I don't think that there's really any decision to be made here, because otherwise it looks disingenuous if you're trying to establish diplomatic relations with the country, but you're still saying, hey, guess what? We don't really trust you at all, even though you've pretty much done most of the things we've asked in terms of the whole sanction situation. Now, obviously, Castro is, I don't want to say somebody not to be trusted so outright, but he's also a very old man. It's not the same Castro that you were dealing with when the scenario first came up. So if you don't really show some level of honor to the agreement, I think it looks bad from the American standpoint. But, this all relates back to, of course, me, again, and the baseball situation here. The baseball situation becomes a completely different scenario if all of a sudden, I've said this on this show before, if all of a sudden Cuban players are part of the world market. And Cuba has turned out some of the best players in the world, but they've had to go through literally hell and high water in order to be able to play the game outside of their island nation. And that, to me, is as interesting as anything else. You got guys like Yasiel Puig who are playing and have incredible stories. El Duque Hernandez, Livan Hernandez. There's all types of players that had to endure all sorts of hardships to get here to play ball. If that hurdle is dropped, you're going to see an explosion of Cuban baseball players and Cuban athletes in general all over the world.
It was really telling to me that not long after the president started talking about dropping some of the sanctions on Cuba several months ago, one of the first people to put out a statement was Major League Baseball.
Absolutely.
Very quickly.
Absolutely. Because they got to establish how they're going to be able to do that legally, because now it's a very tricky sort of combo between asylum and work permits and where a player can go and making sure that there's a safety factor and making sure that other people at home are safe. There's a whole process that it takes beyond just getting a player onto American shores in order to get a Cuban guy to be able to play in Major League Baseball. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Getting your thoughts on whether or not Cuba should come off the terror blacklist. Carl in Nashville, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, and absolutely should be taken off the list. This, to me, has been one of the stupidest American foreign policies of all times. I mean, we have relationships with Russia. We have relationships with China. We have relationships with Vietnam, for God's sakes. And the last time I checked, my father and numerous other teenagers never actually went to Cuba and fought a war like they went to Southeast Asia and fought against Vietnam. It's just one of the stupidest foreign policies that we could have, and it's time to do away with it.
All right. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate the phone call. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377. Yeah, I think Carl sums it up that a lot of people believe. It's just time to move on. It's time to establish a better relationship with our neighbors to the south, because it just doesn't make sense not to. It's really, really all it comes down to. All right, closing in on the second hour. I'm Clinton Yates. It's tax day. It's a very burdensome day here in D.C. Thinking about Uncle Sam, thinking about Honest Abe. Got a lot happening around here. I'm Clinton Yates. It's the end of the Bill Press Show. Sorry, it's the end of this segment. It is not the end of the Bill Press Show.
Stick around, guys.
Stick around. I'll be here.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction, they talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in for Bill Press here. Let's see what the president's doing today. He is, looky here. He is going to meet up with President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia. That's an interesting name. And President Alpha Condé of Guinea and President Ernest Bai Koroma of Sierra Leone. Vice President will also be there, so apparently he is doing some West African diplomacy there. That's kind of cool. And then he's headed down to Charlotte, where he will be participating in a town hall. Let us read from this. While in Charlotte, he's participating in a town hall with blogger, and she knows about working family issues at Imaginon, an educational library and theater arts center. So if you're interested in that, you're going to be able to watch that at whitehouse.gov/live. But let's talk about what they did last night, Peter, which is a lot more fun. I actually want to go to the second clip here, which is that they spoke about the history of gospel music when they hosted a concert that featured Aretha Franklin, Darlene Love, Rodney Crowell, and Lyle Lovett, of all people. They talked a little bit about the history of gospel.
It is very important for us to coordinate our activities.
Sorry, that's the wrong one. Here's the one I was looking for.
Good.
Even though they were often forbidden to read or write, or even speak freely, slaves were permitted to sing. Songs were where their dreams took flight, where they expressed faith and love.
Now, not one to be necessarily a huge God Squad guy, I do appreciate the value of gospel music. It is very important in not only the African-American tradition of this country, but in a lot of musical traditions of this country. So I think in conjunction with all the things that they've done, this was a very good move for them to try to honor a music genre that's really been good. And so when we're going to take us out, let's go out on the president and his thoughts about gospel, because this is fun to listen to.
Well, I hope everybody's in the spirit tonight. Well,
This is The Bill Press Show.
James West here, reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
So this mission is to particularly try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight, it's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now. Please.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
Online, this is The Bill Press Show.
It's me, kiddos. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post. I'm filling in for Bill Press here. It's Wednesday, April 15th, 2015, tax day, so get it done. I want to thank everybody for tuning in on your local progressive channel, or if you're listening to us on the iHeartRadio app or the TuneIn app on the Progressive Voices channel, I appreciate that as well. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. And, of course, you can watch us on Free Speech TV or YouTube's TawkrTV, where you can see all of us in our glory. Across the glass, Ogburn, how are you this morning, Peter?
Hey, Clinton.
Glad to be here.
Here we are.
Here we are. Again, on our own. Going down the only road we've ever known. 866-55-PRESS is the phone number here. 866-557-7377. If you call that, you will hear Alicia Cruz. She will talk to you. And if you're watching us on one of the aforementioned channels, the man controlling that is Cyprian Bolding, donut enthusiast. So, want to thank everybody for tuning in. Of course, on the line, we have Elahe Izadi from the Washington Post, my friend Elahe. Hello, Elahe.
Hey, good morning, guys.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
All right. Before we get to the important stuff, I want to mention a story that I saw. It is on a website called DCist. It is called This Is Why You Don't Pitch Us Your Marriage Proposal. I want to know what you think about this, Elahe. So, Peter, apparently what happens is people are writing to blogs and websites in order to try to get press coverage of their allegedly surprise proposals. This seems gauche on so many levels to me.
This is awful.
Like, who does this?
Crazy people.
Elahe, your thoughts?
Well, I have a story to share, actually.
Oh.
I was at a comedy open mic about a year ago.
Oh, no.
It was pretty sad, as they go. Very awkward gentleman decided to propose to his girlfriend, and it was unclear whether she said yes. I don't know. But a few months later, I see an Onion article with their picture and their story more or less in the article.
What?
Yeah, it was really bizarre. It was really bizarre, but I think if you're going to have press coverage, The Onion is the way to go.
That's a good point. Because, I mean, there's just so many things that could go wrong there. So first of all, why would you want the media at your wedding proposal if you don't necessarily know that they're going to say yes? And more specifically, what if you botch it up? You got all these donks that do things like, let's say they're at a baseball game or something, and they make all sorts of mistakes. Like, if you screw that up, you are looking bad. Peter.
Don't. First of all, Public proposals are pretty silly. This is me talking, right?
Agreed.
I understand that, like, maybe you have some sort of weird common ground between your soon-to-be or maybe fiance or whatever. But, like, nobody wants to see it. Yeah. I once saw a guy propose in the middle of a mall wearing, like, Adidas slides and a Washington football team jersey in a mall.
You just got that in on a Saturday afternoon?
Wait.
Yeah, it's just
Maybe he couldn't wait.
maybe, but you know what? Wait.
Yeah.
Just wait. It's not that hard. Do it in private. What are you going to do at a baseball game? Good grief.
No, I'm with you. And then you have to applaud and stuff. I don't want to do that.
I never have, and I never will.
Yeah, never will. All right, we got the Washington Post Elahe Izadi with us. We're going to get to some other stuff. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. I love when a story starts with this. A Florida man learned a very valuable lesson in the importance of being yourself. Over the weekend, he drives a white Crown Victoria that he put a police interceptor emblem on, and he would pull people over. Well, he pulled 2 people over the weekend that didn't much appreciate it. It was 2 actual police detectives.
Oh, no.
Yeah. If you're going to pull people over...
Why do people do this?
People are crazy.
I don't get that.
This is the same type of guy who would propose in public.
Yeah.
Like, just a crazy person. The man, John Arthur Benedict, who is almost 70 years old, by the way, pulled over 2 police officers. They realized what was happening, detained him, and arrested him. He has been charged with impersonating a police officer and unlawful use of police insignia. So he is not going to be playing cop anytime soon.
Florida man.
Florida man, indeed. CareerCast took a look at the worst jobs of 2015.
Uh-oh.
Do you want to know what the worst job of 2015 is, Clinton?
Elahe, guess first. I know we all know the answer.
I know what the answer is.
What's
Just
the answer?
Say it. Journalist.
Newspaper reporter is at the bottom of the list, folks. I'm very sorry. I'm not sure where radio producer calls on that list, but it ain't much better.
Yeah.
Barely above newspaper reporter is lumberjack. So you've always got that.
I went outdoors.
Yeah, I mean, hold on, though. Lumberjack, I mean, that's insane.
Well, so here's how
I
they...
didn't know there were still lumberjacks.
But there are still lumberjacks. Here's how they got the criteria. They take a look at the effects of the job on your body, physically, mentally. They take a look at what kind of health care coverage you typically get, and then they factor in the wages. So, you know, obviously, if you've got higher wages, but it's really tough on your body, mentally and physically, then that's not so good. So they try and balance everything out.
I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say that being a lumberjack is a little bit more stressful than being a journalist.
Yeah. I get that.
What about web content generators?
What about brands?
What about just brands?
Brands. Also near the bottom is Cook. Oh, and here we go. Number 1, like 4 from the bottom is broadcaster.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So we're all on the same boat here together.
Bottom
folks.
of the barrel radio.
Yes, exactly. That's us. And have you seen the Kind bars, the little health bars, the
Those are
Kind
delicious.
bars, right? And they're healthy, right?
I guess.
Well, they claim to be healthy, but a new study took a look, and the FDA actually sent a letter to the Kind bar company and said, quote, "None of your bars meet the requirements for the use of nutrient content, claiming that you are nutrient content claim healthy." So they claim to be healthy, and the FDA says, no, not so fast. We took a look at this, and it is not healthy at all in the least. They count sugar being a big ingredient in these bars, and a lot of carbohydrates, which you kind of have to know about.
So they're lying, basically.
They're lying.
Yeah.
Kind bars, by the way, last year, their growth jumped 82%.
Wow.
So, like, people are buying them, people are loving them.
They're delicious.
Because they might be delicious.
They're full of sugar.
But they're not very healthy for you.
All right. Thanks, Peter. Dad, of course, on the line with us is the Washington Post Elahe Izadi, who has been in this studio very many times and does a lot of different things at the Post now, and a lot of them are funny. One of which yesterday was a very interesting story, because I like to do this as well, about how things were covered back in the day. And of course, today is the 150th anniversary of the death of Abraham Lincoln. Elahe wrote a story about how things went, and buried leads were a big topic. What was this like reporting this story? And tell me what you found, Elahe.
Well, I had a lot of fun looking into this, looking up old newspaper front pages. The Associated Press, actually, the day before, had posted their own, they posted online, this is how it was covered, AP was there. And the AP lead starts, President Lincoln and wife visited Ford's Theater this evening for the purpose of witnessing the performance of The American Cousin. And then the second line is about how General Grant missed it because he took a late train. And you don't get to the fact that President Lincoln was shot until the third graph, and then you keep going, and there's some business about blood oozing from the wound out of the back of his head. But you don't get to it until you're reading pretty deep in the story. So I had to read it a few times to find it.
What?
Find the news element.
Why do you think that is? I mean, I guess, listen, I don't know as much as I probably should about news trends from that time of American history, but you probably read a fair amount of these different stories. Why do you think that is, that it wasn't necessarily top of mind to mention that he got shot in the theater?
I mean, it might have been, there might have been an AP Wire bulletin that went out first, and then this was kind of the right-through, which, it happens. But, I guess it's like part of when did this concept of the inverted pyramid come to be, and that just means, you get to the newsiest part as quickly as possible, and the least relevant things go at the bottom, and you move in that direction. There was another story in, let me find it. It was the Evening Star.
The Washington Evening Star.
The Washington Evening Star, which I was super into this front page because, they have their story, assassination of the president, like in all capital letters. But to the left of that runs an advertisement for a love elixir right next to that headline. So I know you got to pay the bills. But maybe the situation demands that you just not run an ad or that ad right there.
Right.
And then my favorite front page was the Cleveland Morning Leader because it used 7 exclamation marks in the headline. 7, I counted, 7. It was amazing. They used 3 after Lincoln. Assassination of President Lincoln, and then 3 exclamation marks.
So what?
How many
exclamation
marks?
How many exclamation marks were after
headline?
the love potion, the sex potion thing?
Let me look. I mean, I did Photoshop love elixir SMH next to it. Not the time. Not the time. What were you going to say, Clinton?
Going through old newspapers is always like super, super fun. What were some of the other things that you found that you just thought were interesting? I mean, like I'm big on, because I had to look through some old newspapers for a sports story I was doing, and it's always interesting to see what like the other items on the front page were that day, because now it's sort of like, well, if there's one story, you kind of blow it out. But looking at sort of what the secondary things that were still news on a day like that is always interesting. Did you find anything that you came across you thought was particularly of note?
Yeah, on the Washington Evening Star, like that advertisement was, the way it started out, I just thought it was so fascinating because I'm like, nothing has changed. Because it's like a message for men and women, how to like have more affection, how to gain and retain affection, and it's like giving you advice on how to have like love and happiness. And it's just so funny to me how things are exactly the same. People are still... they still want that and still are looking for, quick fixes and that sort of thing. The other thing was the New York Herald's coverage of the assassination. They had that on 7 editions, running in different papers. So that carried notices regarding funeral and messages from different officials, and that, what day would be dedicated to a national day of mourning. So you could tell, it was just interesting looking at some papers and how they treated it and recognizing how big of a catastrophe this was, not in the age of cable news, Twitter, when people could instantly kind of collectively come together and watch coverage and mourn and feel this all at the same time. It's like people are picking these papers up like a day, 2 days later.
Right. No, it's a fascinating thing to look at old media to me, because like you said, the progression of where we've come to, we got large newspaper outlets or large media outlets Snapchatting things now. The notion of sort of how we present things, I know this is sort of very inside for people in the business though, but to me is forever fascinating. In DC, they're doing a lot of things around town today to sort of commemorate the death, but the newspaper is still very much a part of how, I don't know, a lot of people get major bad news, and to see how it was 150 years ago then, to me it's just fascinating as a human.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the first rough draft of history, right? This is how people were experiencing this moment at that period of time. And even when there is something that's like a very big story or a historic moment and you're living it, even today, I mean, people run out to get the edition of, the Washington Post, plug there, or whatever newspaper to kind of commemorate that, right? Because that's something you'll always be able to have.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Elahe.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. See you soon.
Good one.
All right. Have a good one. That's Elahe Izadi. She's a reporter for the Washington Post. Those of you who are longtime listeners of the show have heard her on this air before with me as a co-host and as a guest. So thank her for coming on, talking about that. We're going to talk a little bit more about Lincoln when we get back, because people sleep on what actually happened. Some dude ran up on the president and shot him in the back of the head and got away for a while. The actual history of that is completely off the chain. 150th anniversary of that. We'll talk about it when we get back. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bill Press.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job, and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand, and they don't get it, and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university. And,
yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post, filling in for Bill here on Tax Day. It also happens to be the day that President Lincoln died. Now, there's a couple things about this, which is that Washington, D.C. has a large historical community. So when a lot of things like this happen, people come out of the woodwork and they do a lot of good work to commemorate a lot of the very sort of federal history of this city. I must admit, though, I am stunned at the numbers of people that have shown this much connectivity to something that happened 150 years ago. I mean, Lincoln was the first president that was assassinated, at least successfully, and last night they had a vigil, and the entire street was packed with people. And I'm not casting aspersions on this. I'm not making fun of it at all. It's just, it is very remarkable to be.
That's amazing.
The connectivity that people have to this. They're doing a reenactment this morning there, and apparently they played Amazing Grace, and people are having full blown breakdowns over, something that, I mean, a lot of historians are very sort of bound to Lincoln because there's so much documentation. It sort of came at a time of America when people really started basically just writing every single thing down, and so there's so much to read. And I've met people in my life who were serious Lincoln buffs, but it's remarkable to me again how very large his impact is, not just in his particular policies or what he did, but his persona is arguably the largest American presidential persona that there is. I mean, you can talk about the Mount Rushmores and so forth. Assume that a lot of them were up there for either sort of commemorative, as in George Washington being the first, but 150 years later, to think that a president is pulling people out into the streets because he was murdered by some wacko actor it's amazing
it really
to me
amazing.
that it gets this much traction. I mean, is this do you know anybody that's into this or no, Peter?
No, I don't. But I also have to say, as cynical as I am about most things, I do kind of get it.
Yeah. Because,
there is such a legacy of the guy, and I think you're right. Part of it is the fact that they have so much of it documented, and it's so relatable. And he's responsible for guiding the country and getting a lot of things done that at the time seemed impossible.
Yeah.
And especially when you put it in the contrast of the way that we do politics today.
No, it's true, man.
It's pretty remarkable.
I just want to say props to all of you all down there at the Ford's Theater, or everybody who's sort of done their part to make sure that the history of this is something we still understand, because it's an important task. I'm just surprised at how many people still care. Good for you. It's a good thing. Anyway, I'm Clinton Yates. I'm filling in for Bill Press. We'll be back.
This is The Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you come.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
This is The Bill Press Show.
And my name is Clinton Yates. Welcome back to the program. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post, filling in for Bill. We're talking about some old Washington traditions, one of which is the Leith Ring at the Ford's Theater for the anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's assassination. At PhillyFan_99 just sent us a photo. This place is packed.
It's bananas down there.
I mean, I get it. Like, obviously, people have a very strong feeling about this, but I must admit, it is very surprising to me how many people are willing to go out of their day to honor this still 150 years later. Another tweet came from @Kellebeck that said, John Wilkes Booth was not a wacko. He was a Southern Avenger, still angry Confederates lost the war. I believe you just contradicted yourself. That's another story. So let's talk about something different that happens in Washington every single year. And we're coming up on it now. We're starting to get the invitations.
Oh, yeah.
I know that your dance card is filling up, Peter. It's the old White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yeah.
Now,
Here it comes.
I have very mixed feelings about this event for multiple reasons. Number one, as a D.C. native who understands the district side of this city and not just the Washington side, this is one of those events that very starkly draws the line and the difference between what we like to call this town and the rest of the city. So all these people talk about what's called Nerd Prom, where this is really just a very small part of the power broker core that occupies Washington, and I use that word occupies intently, that occupies Washington and when they choose to party. Now, there's that factor. I'm not mad about that anymore. I got over that a long time ago. They used to bother me quite a bit as a younger man. But there's also the dork factor, which is all these people who are otherwise, smart folk, hardworking people who really work in intellectualism, all of a sudden finding themselves in a scenario where they feel the need to act cool. Now, that is another thing. So all these press parties, all these things, have you ever been to any of these? You know that they turn into one of two things, either very ugly, sort of like middle school parties or bar mitzvahs on steroids kind of deals, or, and this is my main issue with the White House Correspondents' Dinner, they are fancy beyond belief to the point that it's just not even fun.
Exactly.
So you seem to be very...
I have some takes.
Yeah, you have some hot takes?
I have a take. I have a hot take. I have some very just freshly baked takes for you.
Let me know how you feel about this, Peter.
So first of all, anything super fancy makes me nervous.
Yes,
right?
I do not like super fancy.
It is extremely fancy, and it just bothers me. Not even just the dressing up part. It's just the uncomfortable black of it all. But the thing that really drives me nuts is how these successful people act like complete lunatics around C-list.
Yeah, we're not getting A-listers.
Like,
sorry.
Look, there are some like big-ish names who come, right? Like,
who is the biggest name you've seen at the court or heard of even going to Nerd Prom, if you will?
All right.
I mean, I can't think of anybody who's a super A-lister, so to speak.
Clooney is gone, right? Has Clooney come? It seems like I remember
okay.
Clooney.
The Clooney.
But those are not the norm, right?
Yeah.
Like, I freaked out. The only person that I really truly ever freaked out and asked to take a picture with, I've done it with one person. One person, Tracy Morgan.
Really?
That's the one person I ever was like, can I take a picture with you?
That's awesome.
That's the one person. And I went and I said hello to George Lucas one year and things like that. But for the most part, what drives me nuts is you've got C, D, maybe B list actors, and these political people are like, it's like they're at the zoo. There's no air of you know what you're doing. They just walk right up to someone and say, "Hey, can I take your picture?" Put the camera right in their face. Just start taking pictures of people.
It's very awkward.
Not even a hello. Not even a how's it going. It's just like, oh look. Oh, click. And it's just taking as many pictures as you can of as many people as you can. And it's just tacky.
It's very
just
awkward.
Tacky behavior.
I have two stories. One of which is that I got a phone call yesterday asking me if I wanted to go to a pre-party for the dinner. And they asked, well, are you going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner? I was like, well, no, as I did not get invited.
Right.
However, would you like to go to a pre-party? And I said, sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's pre-parties, there's post-parties.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the whole night.
There's so many parties.
But the pre-party, I didn't realize this because the person who asked me was a relatively reasonable individual who I deal with a lot, very nice person. Sends me this thing, and I'm reading it. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. Then it's just like, boom, see at the bottom, black tie required. I was like, nope, sorry, can't do it. I can't do black tie required. Now, if it's an option, that's one thing, because you can sort of slide, you know what I mean? And you don't feel like a total jerk if you just show up in a suit.
Right.
But black tie required is something that I just can't handle.
No.
I can't deal with it. Second story is that, I want to say 5 years ago, I got invited to a post party where it was at the Reagan building. Have you ever been in that building?
Yeah.
Downtown, and it's got you go down the stairs. It's like a big ballroom. And what I did was, I had bought this white blazer for one of these deals where I was at a mall. It was $100, and I was like, you know what? Let me just buy that in case one day I happen to need a white blazer for God knows what, a theme party, something else stupid. So I got this invite, and I was like, you know what? I'm breaking out the white blazer.
Yeah.
And it was a monster hit, and I felt like such an idiot because I was like, people probably think I'm seriously wearing this thing.
Exactly. I was just thinking.
You look nice. Right, there were many other dudes there in white blazers, and I was like, oh my God, I've made a terrible mistake because this was just a joke. You know what I mean? Because I thought it would be funny to wear this to this event, and as I get there, everybody's complimenting me.
Oh wow,
asking
Clinton,
me
you look
where
great.
I got it. Who am I wearing? All this stuff, and I'm like, no, this was just. I just figured this would be a good time to wear this dumb thing because I didn't otherwise have any reason to own it. And it backfired in my face, and I felt like
that's pretty great. That's pretty great.
I don't know. What are your correspondence dinner plans?
So the last 2 years, I have purposely been out of town. I go to New Orleans for Jazz Fest.
Ah, okay.
And I had a trip booked to go this year as well, but we just had to cancel it for a bunch of different reasons. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to be at home.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna come down here and deal with that.
Do you see who the host is this year?
Yeah, and she's good. I like her. Cecily Strong from Saturday Night Live.
Fame, yeah,
she's good. I mean, for work purposes, I'll check it out and watch it. Probably not that night. I'll have other plans, but we'll have some audio and stuff the next day. But
I might try to crash a party.
Yeah, I've crashed a couple parties down there.
Year that I just show up. Tell people what my name is, see if it works.
With a white blazer?
Yeah, no, yo.
Yeah, we're gonna wear that white blazer?
First of all, the white blazer is long gone.
Damn it.
I lost it in a dry cleaning incident that I don't want to get. I don't want to.
It's a little raw?
I don't want to.
You want to talk about that?
It's a little raw.
You want to talk about that?
I'm still very upset about what happened because after I wore it once, I started to sort of like the blazer, and I wore it again once more to a ridiculous event.
Oh, man.
That was awesome, though, and it was one of those, I'm going to wear this thing every 2 years, and the application is going to work, or every 2.5 years, and then somebody screwed it up in the dry cleaning and it got lost. So
you should crash a party. Party crashing's fun.
I might do that.
Yeah, do that. I'm staying away from the whole thing. I'm a little over it.
Anyway, all right. Well, when we get back, we will talk about some other things. It's been an interesting day here in Washington. I'm Clinton Yates. This is the Bill Press Show. It's also tax day. Remember, this is your friendly neighborhood advice. PSA, rather. Do your taxes. You don't want the IRS at your door.
Connect with the Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found on the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies in Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name is Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist at the Washington Post, filling in for Bill here on April 15th. Sort of a sad day in the music world today. Lost another legend. This sorts of things happen, but, you know, the 50s and 60s and 70s put out a large generation of artists whom were very influential in terms of, you know, what a lot of we understand as popular music is. And Percy Sledge died yesterday. He was, let's see, I don't have this off the top of my head. He was in his 70s. And most of you know him from When a Man Loves a Woman, which topped the charts in 1966, I believe. He was a crooner, old soul crooner, and, you know, he just had a sound that was very much of a certain age. You know, when you hear music like that, you think of a certain period in time in America. Sledge was also a frequent top 5 on the all hair team.
I was about to say, in
American culture.
His hair back then.
Great hair then and now and through the years. And he was once featured in a documentary about Muscle Shoals. Peter, you can set this up a little better than I can.
Phenomenal documentary. It's on Netflix if you haven't seen it. Muscle Shoals. And it chronicles all that very unique sound that came out of that Muscle Shoals recording studio that went on, and also Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, about all of those session artists and the bigger named artists that came through. Like the guy that plays that opening organ on When a Man Loves a Woman that's so recognizable is the same guy that played that crazy soulful organ on Aretha Franklin records.
Who is that?
Spooner Oldham is the guy's name.
Oldham, okay.
And what's funny is all these guys cranking out all of these funky records were all white guys.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was...
Absolutely.
There were always a couple of funny scenes where these black artists would come in and be like, hold up.
Right.
Yeah, so it's really, really great documentary. And Percy Sledge is from the area, and he's one of the first people that recorded an album there. And one of the things he talks about is, first of all, in the documentary, he talks about when he first learned to sing.
I was a little guy working in the field, chopping cotton,
singing to the older people in the field that always said that one day my voice would be heard all over the world, but I never thought that would happen.
Now, let's not downplay the importance of what he's talking about there. In the fields chopping
cotton.
I mean,
in Alabama.
In the 50s and 60s, that is a rough life. I mean, this is not, we're not talking about, I kind of remember when, we had to walk uphill in the snow both ways. Nah. Chopping cotton in the South, singing to older people is a public health service, is what it is. Because you're keeping people happy because they're doing something they probably hate.
Yeah.
In order to keep them at least in enough of a mindset to stay alive. That's an amazing thing. And again, on his music, what else did he say in the documentary?
I was an orderly working with the sick people. I'd sing a song for them, and they go to sleep. I got such a big kick out of that, and I could see my patient laying up there smiling, and feeling better. So one day I was invited to sing at the Elks Club here in Sheffield. And just so happened Quinn Ivy was a disc jockey at WLAY. And he heard me sing this song, and he loved the melody and the feel. He said, Percy Sledge, have you ever been interested in cutting a record?
I love that clip because he talks about how he went from singing for old people on the cotton fields to singing for old people in the hospital. Again, his music is healing lives. You know what I mean? He's legitimately making people feel better.
Isn't that crazy?
It's amazing. It's amazing. But back to Muscle Shoals. I wrote a story once about a guy from Muscle Shoals.
Oh, yeah?
Norbert Putnam, also known as Putt. He was, I believe, a bass player, and he was in the Muscle Shoals rhythm section.
Oh, wow.
And he played with Elvis. Elvis gave him the nickname Putt. And so I talked with this guy one day. He actually turns out to be the neighbor of a friend's mom. He lives down in Nashville now. And the reason I talked to him is because his band played backup for all of the bands that led up to playing the Beatles' first show in the U.S. in D.C.
Holy crap.
So he tells this story about how they had to catch a flight up here to D.C., and they played the show. They didn't really even care about the Beatles. They were more concerned about the other people they were playing behind. They were so in awe to see. They played the show, and then they filmed some of the show on their new 8mm cameras. So they have all this old footage of the Beatles, and that they got an invite after the show to go to the British Embassy. Now, at the time, they had to consider whether or not they were going to skip their flight to get back to their studio session the next day at Fame because, they were session workers. So they basically said, screw it, we're not going to the British Embassy. And as it turned out, it was one of the biggest decisions that he ever regretted. And they tore up the envelope because they were all mad, and they wished they had gone, and they had tried to get back to find the envelope. But it turns out somebody had taken it, and they never ended up meeting the Beatles. At the British Embassy. And he said it was one of the biggest life regrets he ever had. But it's crazy to think that what he said was John Lennon, the Muscle Shoals rhythm section, John Lennon was a huge fan of theirs. And so, if you just think about that, Putnam coming out of that studio and Percy Sledge and that whole sound, it wasn't just lovemaking in the '60s that made people enjoy that. I mean, that was a full blown cauldron of talent that really changed the way a lot of global pop music sounded, and it's really an interesting thing.
Yeah, I seriously can't recommend the documentary enough because they talk. I mean, the bands, Rolling Stones came through there.
Yeah.
With the Wilson Pickett. When he did Hey Jude, the guy playing guitar on that is Dwayne Allman. Dwayne Allman was a session player briefly in the Muscle Shoals band.
Right.
It's crazy.
It's amazing to think the kind of talent that came out of that part of the country. Anyway, when we get back, going to wrap things up. It's been a bit of a long morning, but we're coming down the stretch. I'm Clinton Yates.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to the program. My name's Clinton Yates. I'm a columnist for the Washington Post, filling in for Bill here. It's April 15th, 2015. Guess what I'm doing tonight, Peter?
Wednesday night. Doing your taxes?
No, I'm doing those after the show.
Okay, all right.
I will be at the Washington Capitals playoff game. They host the Islanders tonight. The last time they played in a playoff series, one Dale Hunter ended Pierre Turgeon's season with a super cheap shot, a very famous play in NHL history that got Dale Hunter suspended for 21 games, the largest ever suspension at the time. It was a pretty ugly scene. I wrote a story about it if you want to read that at WashingtonPost.com. I've been doing some minutes on the sports desk for those of you who haven't been paying attention.
Nice.
However, the reason why this is important to bring up because I will be taking over the Washington Post Snapchat account. If I could say that right, that'd be great. So I'll be at the game, snapping and chatting, chatting and snapping. So yeah, if you're into that, maybe you can follow that. I mean, I don't really even know what this is going to entail. Shout out to my colleague Sarah Larimer, who showed me Slarimer, as she's known. You can follow her on Twitter at Slarimer. Who showed me all the ropes, so it's going to be me walking all over the arena, Snapchatting.
There's a reason that the Bill Press Show doesn't have a Snapchat account.
Yeah, it's probably a very good reason.
I would be the one running it, and I would most definitely screw that up.
Exactly. All right, well, I want to thank all our guests today. USA Today's David Jackson, Politico's Michael Grunwald, The Atlantic's David Graham, and, of course, the Washington Post's Elahe Izadi. For Peter, for Alicia, for Cyprian, for Clinton, for Jelly Donuts, for Bill Press, for Tax Day, for Percy Sledge, for Abraham Lincoln. and for the United States of America. Thanks for listening.
This is the Bill Press Show.